Today we're going to hear from two communications specialists who you mostly are probably familiar with. Communications Lab is renowned through the County of Orange. They're an award-winning organization for their communications and community outreach strategies. Today we'll be hearing from Arianna Barrios, who's the CEO and president, and Brian Lochrie, who is president.
She's CEO.
Owner and CEO. Sorry, I got mixed up there. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this program over to them. Again, thank you all for coming, and we look forward to seeing you at the next event.
Okay, well, thank you very much for having us. We really appreciate it. As Jen mentioned, Brian Lochrie, Arianna Barrios, partners in the business and partners in life. So we are married as well.
So you will forgive us our lack of social distancing?
Yes, social distancing is allowed here. So
yeah, it's a unique situation.
Hello. Right. So we are going to go through a short PowerPoint and give you a short presentation. But what we really want to do is entertain questions and make sure that we're answering the questions that you have. To give you a little background about Communications Lab, we have been doing community outreach and public relations primarily for not only cities, but also other public agencies, water districts, developers. We work with infrastructure projects, mostly surrounding water, power, and roads are kind of our forte. So it's mostly doing community outreach, letting people know these are the projects that are being proposed. This is how you can be involved. This is how you can have your voice heard in the process, and explaining what that process is to the community in a variety of different ways. And certainly COVID-19 has affected the way community outreach is maybe being done, but it really shouldn't affect that. Community outreach should continue to be done. And that's kind of the focus of our presentation today. So if the tech works here, I am going to bring this up. So you should be seeing now the PowerPoint presentation, yes?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So this is kind of the table of contents, so to speak. We're going to be going through a quick overview. We're going to talk a little bit about public meetings and different options that folks have in terms of community outreach for public meetings, and how you accept public comments and those various items and the various platforms that are being used and can be used. Constituent communications, how you make sure that we're still communicating with our constituents at our various municipalities and public agencies. And then a few creative outreach ideas that we've done and we've seen other cities and other municipalities and public agencies do. And then after that, we'll wrap it up with some questions.
Okay, so I'm going to take the first slide, which is just an overview. I'm sure I want to start off with saying too that I know a lot of the folks who have who are part of this particular presentation, who are in on this Zoom call. I know a lot of you are in everyone's in a challenging time, some of you more so than others. So we've tried to think of this both high tech and low tech, all the way up and down the chain, because some of you are in smaller cities, smaller organizations or agencies, and the resources we wanted to try to make sure that we were giving you valuable information that you could use on any level of the scale. But the bottom line is right now, as we've observed and what we've been working for with our clients, is that people are desperately hungry for communication. So, and that comes in all sorts of forms. So they're hungry, obviously, for information about the virus itself and what does it mean for their safety, their personal safety and their families. But they're also very hungry for, when does it end? How is this going to affect me? What happens next? That's starting to be a continuous conversation. How do we reopen? So the need for communications on all these levels is very important. What we need to think about as communicators or leaders is that we need to go to the platforms that residents are at. If you're posting coronavirus information or emergency operations information, 30 pages deep on a website that no one ever goes to, but you're not utilizing social media channels, you're not doing video conferences, you're not doing utilizing any of the next door platforms that are available to you, that can be very problematic. That's not where your community is at, and so you're missing each other. So then community and members and residents are starting to say, where are my leaders? Because you're not speaking to them where they're hanging out. And believe me, a lot of people are hanging out right now. So
especially at this time, people are at home, they're on social media, they're constantly looking at Facebook, they're on their local community talk pages or buzz pages, they're on Nextdoor, and there's a lot more activity now than there has been in the past because people are home, and quite frankly, a lot of them may be bored, and so they tend to get each other whipped up sometimes on issues and items. So it's important that when you're out communicating that you're doing it on the platforms and in the areas and on the pages where people are. So I always like to think of the website as a great repository for information, but the social media channels are where the information you can get out to the public.
So second to that, following up on being on the platforms where people are at, is who is delivering the message. There are survey after survey and information out there that's saying that what people want to hear from is the leaders that they recognize. And when you're talking about a city, and this can hold true for an agency as well, it is not necessarily the city manager that they know. They probably didn't know them before, and they don't necessarily want to know them now. And if that's the person who's leading your message, it probably more likely needs to be your mayor or the city council member, the people they elected. They know them. They have a face and a presence that they knew before a crisis. So working with those leaders is going to be a very important piece of this process, and what we particularly strategize for, development of messaging.
And if you're the mayor, you may say to yourself, well, I'm the mayor, but I'm not the expert on X, Y, or Z. There's somebody else that is. That's okay. What you can do is set the tone.
Yes.
You can communicate with your constituents in a language that they understand. And then you can certainly have somebody available to you who is the expert in whatever field it is you're talking about, who then can address the details of it or be able to take technical questions and things like that. But as the elected leaders, people really are looking towards, hey, I may see Eric Garcetti or Gavin Newsom, but that's not my mayor. They don't represent me. Where's my mayor? Where are my leaders, my city council members? So, so this offers a wonderful opportunity, we believe, for the elected officials to be able to communicate with your residents, but making sure that you're doing it in a way that's uniform and in cohesion with your city and with the policy direction of your city.
Now, that does not mean that you necessarily have to get into a deep dive tit for tat with anybody that you're talking to. While we do highly recommend two-way communications and making it a two-way street, that could be more in the realm of accepting questions. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going toe-to-toe with someone who's just bringing forward an idea that's really out in left field, or like wanting you to comment on conspiracy theories. It could just mean that if you're taking questions, that's an important part of the two-way street of communication. In addition, one of the things you can think about, again, these are people that your residents know, that the agency's customers know, is repurposing staff assignments. So Huntington Beach was a great example of this. I had our good friend told us about this in terms of one of the things they did is they repurposed people who were working at home through the libraries, and they've turned their library staff into researchers. So that the website pages, the information they're putting on social media was very deep in information that no other city had in terms of resources that residents could get to, because they turned folks who really didn't necessarily have a role to play in an at-home environment and turned them into just power brokers in terms of finding information for their residents. And again, created a sense of camaraderie within the team.
And there's a website, hbready.com, if you get a chance to go on it to kind of see. We think Huntington Beach has done a really good job in this aspect of being able to communicate important information to their to their residents. But it also, remember, that's a repository. So when you're out there on the various platforms, you can drive people to that hbready.com website for more information. Tone matters, and when I talk about tone, we do have to be sensitive, and we all know, for example, we work with the toll roads, wonderful organization, transportation corridor agencies, but we remind them that as they're talking about, well, we're going to change the ways that people can pay from the penalties. Instead of being 5 days for one-time tolls, it's now going to be 10 days, which is wonderful, and it's nice that they're doing that. But when people are out there saying, I'm worried about the health of myself and my loved ones, I'm worried about my job, I don't know how I'm going to make rent and how I'm going to make my mortgage payment, telling folks that, well, we're going to reduce so you don't have to pay tolls for, an extra 5 days on the one-time toll. It's nice, but you got to watch the tone, because people may react to that negatively, saying, you don't understand what we're going through right now. So think about what you're delivering, the message and the information you're delivering, and make sure that you're framing it in the correct way so that you're empathizing with your constituents that are out there. Communications is a two-way street, always. So we want to listen more than we talk, right? God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth. So we want to make sure we're listening twice as much as we talk. We talked about websites and repurposing staff assignments. And then don't forget our third-party partners, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute, but that can be, it might be nonprofit organizations, it might be chambers of commerce, but there's a lot of folks out there that are communicating with their constituents. So how can they communicate the messages that we need to get out to their constituents?
But this is also true in terms of resources. So for many of you on this call, your contract cities or your agencies that have partnerships with others. So the Sheriff's Department has a very active communications department that could maybe be called on and ask for some assistance. Again, I'll go back to Huntington Beach, where they had a very, and the city of Anaheim as well, they have a very deep and strong police department, and the police department had resources that the city could draw on to supplement the communications they were putting out. So they had young, hungry officers who were able and willing to go and do videos, and because they were out in the field anyway. And so that has now become a repository of messaging that the city is able to draw on in both instances. And I would recommend that you would reach out to and see if there are resources that you could piggyback on with the Sheriff's Department as well.
So talking about public meetings, obviously this has been a challenge for many cities, many public agencies in general. How do we hold these public meetings to ensure safe social distancing, but we want to make sure that we're allowing for public comments? And we know that Zoom and other platforms allow for people to come in, and they say, oh, well, we have safeguards. You can put somebody in a waiting room, and if you don't want to let them in, you don't have to let them in. Well, that may work in a private company, but for a public agency, there's a obligation under the Brown Act. You have to allow anybody that wants to come in from the public to make a comment to make a comment. Now, Zoom has made it easier for you to remove people. So if somebody does something that's inappropriate or anything like that, the administrator can immediately remove that person. But again, it is a reactive tool. So there's, but like I say, it's not that much different than somebody that would walk into a public meeting and say something that would be inappropriate at a public meeting. It's a public meeting. They're allowed to say within the certain confines and do within a certain confines. And if they go beyond those confines, they can be removed. So, the same thing occurs on online public meetings as well. So it's one of those policy challenges that cities have. You see on the left side of your screen some various platforms that various public agencies in Orange County are using to conduct public meetings. I will note, you'll see at the bottom there, Facebook Live. The city of Lake Forest they've been doing this for a long time, actually, long before COVID-19, where they've been allowing people at home, they broadcast their meetings via Facebook Live. And if you want to comment, you type in your comment, and the public information officer in Lake Forest, Jonathan Volsky, will read the public comment to the city council. So it's a way for people at home to be able to participate in public meetings. And this was happening long before COVID-19. So there may be opportunities as we move forward and start to come out of this that we recognize there are some advantages to doing some of this online activities, you know, we may carry it on even beyond when we're allowed to once again recongregate. Online in advance, so this is how people have been taking public comments on. You can let people know in advance what you want to comment on, send an email in, live, Zoom live. There's a lot of different combinations for that. So when it comes to constituent communications, certainly people like we said earlier, they're hungry for resources. This is a screenshot of that HB Ready page. It's important for us to make sure that as cities and as public agencies that we're listening to our residents and that we're responding to where they're at, that we're providing them important and timely information. I know Director Withers with IRWD, one of the important information we have with water is we want to make sure that people understand that COVID-19 is not in your water. There are no viruses in the water. All that gets screened out. And so that's been a constant refreshing communication that we want to make sure that we keep hitting the residents over and over with that information. So it's extremely important.
And the other part of this too is that this is also as much of an opportunity as it is a crisis in terms of how you have to manage things. For those of you who are not currently collecting email addresses at your cities or your agencies in order to then add people to newsletters, to important emergency communications, now's the time to go back and look at, speak to your IT person or your web administrator and say, can we just add a button and start collecting that? There are very easy and simple tools in which to set up emergency communications, more so even than the reverse 911, but that you can then start really sending out information that has more depth than a simple message, you know, through that system on the phone. So there are opportunities to grow your base of conversation with your constituents, as well as it is in the moment dealing with the crisis.
So some other tools at our disposal. We really encourage folks to use video. Video is becoming a larger and larger component, particularly when it comes to online. And it doesn't have to be long. It can be a 30-second spot. It can be, you know, a minute and a half. It doesn't have to be long, but video, people are online. They want to see it. It goes well with Instagram, with obviously YouTube and Facebook. So these are the platforms that your constituents are using. So we want to make sure that we really incorporate video to the maximum extent possible that we can. Live Q&A events online are wonderful, Facebook Live events. And then, as I mentioned, make sure that you coordinate with your local businesses, your local schools,
your local chamber,
your nonprofit.
You know what? It looks like we might be having some technical difficulties. I know my audio has gone out, and it looks like at least one person. Brian and Arianna, can you hear me okay? Brian, Arianna, we've lost audio with you. Let me see if I can.
Yeah.
And you'll notice, can you hear me?
We can hear you now.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I guess we
lost you there for a minute, but we can hear you now.
Okay, perfect. Wonderful. So this is a very short video we put together for Transportation Corridor Agency. Whoops. I'm going to restart this real quick. This was just a 30-second video, but you'll notice the video is focused more on what everyone's going through, whether you're a toll road customer or not. It's about what people are going through. And that TCA is there for you. So let me play this real quick.
Remember when the biggest challenge in our lives was traffic congestion? The toll roads were there to provide an alternative to that congestion, Our message now, stay at home, stay with your family, and stay safe. When this crisis is over, Orange County will be back. But for now, the road to recovery is the road that leads you home.
So again, a very short video, 30 seconds. The road to recovery is the road that leads you home. And people might say, well, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense because, you want people using the toll roads. Absolutely, we want people using the toll roads, but we have to be sensitive to where people are right now.
That goes to the earlier comment about tone, that tone was super important.
So another idea that we've seen out there is a sidewalk chalk contest. So as a city, you can say, hey, go out and, do some artwork out on your sidewalk for all the people that are walking and jogging by, and send in your best artwork as a city. And, we'll give out, some kind of prize, that the city might be doing, or it could be a water district or transportation agency. Anybody can really do this. But the idea is these are fun things, gets kids involved, gets families involved. It's something people can do at home, and it allows you to interact with them in a way that's positive. People are hearing so much negative out there. Let's get some positive out there.
So this is one that's actually going on at our office right now. So this is our hometown here in Orange, and so the Community Foundation partnered with the Farmers Market, and they had these signs built. They developed this sign program that now are going out all over the city of Orange. So they were able to find volunteers, create a template, have them build them in their garage, and then people can come pick these up, and then they can paint their own messages on them. But they're popping up all over the city, so it's creating this sense of community pride, that we're in this together, so that people can just really move forward in a much more positive manner. In addition, they built the signs in a way that they could pay for them and have people donate money to the local food bank, which in our town is Mary's Kitchen, and Waste Not OC, which is based here in Orange as well. So the signs were actually raising money for a very critical need within the community, but also then building pride amongst citizens.
And this is one last video we're going to show you, and then we'll take some questions. So this is another, we work with Trevor O'Neill in the he was the city council member of the city of Anaheim. And, one idea that we had seen people were doing were
drive-by birthdays.
Drive-by birthdays, quarantine birthday parades.
So we took it to another level in Anaheim, where we were able to invite the police and fire departments to come and help us out and help Councilman O'Neill do this.
Yep.
Such a great day saying happy birthday to kids in Anaheim Hills. These challenging times, kids are stuck at home and can't have a party with all their friends and family, so we wanted to bring the party to them. We've got Devin over here who turns 6 years old tomorrow. Happy birthday, Devin! Happy birthday, Devin! We're so excited for all the kids and having such a good time out here today. Happy birthday!
It was very thoughtful. It was a last-minute request to our councilman, Mr. O'Neill, and just very thankful that he visited us. It's very special. Caleb doesn't get to celebrate his birthday with his friends, so seeing his city firefighters and police officers come by, it's really, really thoughtful, really special.
I thought that's so awesome. What a cool
wonderful thing. We live in such a great community. It's just awesome.
That was so cool. We just want to say thank you to the Anaheim Fire and policemen for making such a great day for us and making this such a memorable birthday for Devin. So really appreciate it. Happy birthday,
Devin. Loud. So one of the things of that one is that we actually did an online sign-up sheet for that, and I think it was less than 30 minutes. It was like in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
We had all the birthday slots filled. So we're now going to be trying to do that and replicate that over and over again. But people, it just underscored how hungry people were to do something that brings them together. That's a positive rather than all the negative that they're hearing, and that just reminds them that they're in a community that cares about them. So that's going to be a big part of, you know, moving forward and moving into recovery. So with that.
And if anybody has any questions, be happy to answer them.
Thank you so much, Arianna and Brian. That was a great presentation. We appreciate you taking the time to put that together for us. We'll now take any questions. You can chat a question, again, by scrolling over the bottom. You'll see the little chat button. You can click on that and you can type your question in. Or if you prefer, you can unmute yourself. If you don't have video on, please announce who you are. And I'll go ahead and start off with a question to get it going. It seems there are some conflicting messages, you know, as far as how to relate to this crisis from different levels of government, from the federal to the state, to the county, to the local. Those of us that are in messaging positions, how do we kind of cut through that to deliver, you know, information that people really need without upsetting certain constituencies or not?
Well, there certainly is a split in constituencies. I think, as we've all seen, those who say we need to shelter in place, you know, as long as it takes until everybody's 100% safe, to the other extreme where people are saying COVID-19's it's fake and it's not real and we all need to get out there immediately right now. So, you know, it lands obviously somewhere in between, and you know, we have to obviously follow what the state law is, and we are not lawyers, so we rely on the legal folks, as well as the policy folks at the various cities or public agencies, to set that direction and to say, this is the policy that our city is going to take on this issue, and then develop the communications around that policy. So our job is to do that. So we don't set the policy, but we help develop the communications and provide the tools to be able to communicate that policy to the constituents.
And I also want to just add that you can also be very pragmatic about the situation as it stands now. You may absolutely agree that we should be opening up everything tomorrow, and that is okay. But the reality of the situation is that we are ruled by other forces. And so you can agree with that while speaking to your constituents and saying, while I agree with this position, I am doing my best as a leader, as an elected, as a leader of an organization to work towards opening us back up. In the meantime, here are resources for you. Here is where we're at in terms of virus counts. Here's where we're at in terms of supporting other businesses and our fellow community members. So there is always, as a communicator, the opportunity to acknowledge and to share your personal thoughts without exacerbating people to do anything that's unsafe.
Questions from the group? Mayor Brothers, it looks like you have a question.
I do, and I don't see that raise my hand on my prompt. Just a comment about congratulations to Huntington Beach for being really creative with their library, but they own their library. A lot of us have a county library, and that's another hoop that we would have to go through. And I think at this time, we wouldn't be able to utilize our library. I know ours is locked up tighter than a drum.
Yeah, and every city is going to be different, and the ability for the cities to use their resources is going to be different. So, and we recognize that not every city is the same. I would just say, let's take a look and see if we can learn from each other, learn from, you know, what cities are doing and what we can do, And then if we can't do it, we can't do it. But let's try and use whatever resources that we can. Let's try and use it to communicate with the public.
But I would also say that in your particular instance, there are going to be members of, say, the school district that probably they don't have to be teaching instruction, and maybe there is a partnership opportunity to work with your local school district's librarians to provide some content. They might welcome that opportunity, and they have the resources to do that. So that may be an option, or you can always give us a call and we can just brainstorm for a little while about different options and connect you with some partners. So I mean, we're absolutely here to help you connect.
Yep.
I've got some current partners I'd be happy to share.
Councilmember Gross, it looks like you have a question for Brian and Arianna.
I was going to respond to Cheryl. We've actually started using our Parks and Recreation folks, and they've gotten quite creative by putting classes online on video to engage with the public. And I think there's a lot of them that are doing that. You know, you guys at Communications Lab, I've got a ton of notes, so I appreciate all you've put forth in this process. And, you know, we're at a time where I think it's, rather than trying to reinvent the wheel, I like the idea of the City of Orange signs, fundraising to help. It helps bring the community together. It's that kind of thing. And in that case, it helps towards the local food banks and things of that nature. So, you know, a lot of great ideas. One of the things that our city did, just for the benefit of other council members that might be on, is that we've started a red, white, and
Oh, I think it froze.
residents to do the same thing. And the city just did and has published a video showing police and fire going to the local hospital and welcoming them, but showing each of the council members and others in the city with handwritten signs. So there's no speaking, but just music behind. And we've had a lot of good positive feedback on that. So whatever anybody can do, it's, you know, don't think it's proprietary. Copy it, use it, do it. We're in odd times right now, so it really is important to do this.
Thank you. That's exactly right. Let's share our resources.
Any other questions, Jen? Oh, let's see. We're okay. So Chris from the city of Stanton. The question is, are there concerns for overwhelming our communities with too much information, especially in regards for COVID-19? So I think that's a really great question because people are getting overwhelmed in terms of if you think about what they're seeing on the news, if what they're watching on TV. However, what they're not getting, and we saw this in spades with what we did a couple of weeks ago for the OC Forum, is that they're not getting hyper local news. So if you're just regurgitating messages that are coming down from the national level, I do think that they can get easily overwhelmed. But if you're providing very specific information about your city on at least a daily or every other day basis, that's what they're most concerned about. How many cases are in my city? If you have a hospital in your city, is your hospital overwhelmed or is it doing just fine? What about your critical services? So that type of information where we've seen police departments talk about everybody's calling 911 because they're home, and please don't call 911 if it's really not an emergency. Getting and sharing that information is really important to your local constituency. And then the COVID stuff can just be a top line message. Here's where we're at today. And everything is, you know, we're seeing higher numbers, It's not where we thought it would be. Whatever that update is, it doesn't have to be your opinion. It can just be what the numbers say. But then moving on to how that affects your actual services in the city. What's open, what's not, where they can go, what businesses they can support, what resources they can get involved with in terms of charitable giving or community events.
And most public opinion research shows that people trust their cities. They may not trust what's coming out of Washington, what's coming out of Sacramento. Maybe they don't even trust what they're hearing in the national media, but they do trust their city and they trust their local government. And the more, as we know, the more local our government, the more trust we have with them. And so having those local messages coming from the city, I think, are important, and also keeping it positive. There's a lot of negativity out there, and people have a tendency sometimes to stew in that. But if you can get out there with positive and good news messaging that what's going on in your community, whether it's the Orange Strong signs that we have here, or a quarantine birthday parade, or whatever it is, try and keep that message positive of, we're going to get through this, and we're going to get through this together. And people want to hear that. They're hungry for that.
And I would also just add on a final thought for that is that we already are seeing, and I'm sure a lot of you are already looking at your bottom lines, that next year at the end of this budget cycle is going to be very tough. So with that, the goodwill that you buy today will pay dividends in the future. So that's an important thing to think about when it's like, I don't know that we want to do this right now. I don't know that we can do this right now. Some of these things are very cheap and inexpensive ways to buy the goodwill of your residents when you're going to need them most 3-6 months from now, when you're having to have some hard conversations. So that would just be a little aside. I too am an elected official. I work for one of the community college districts. It's going to be hard. It's going to be very hard. So doing what you can now to build that repository of goodwill that you can put away for another rainy day would probably not a bad idea.
All right, are there any other questions out there? This is just a great opportunity to ask some experts who really know what they're talking about. So give it another minute for any questions. Without seeing any, I want to give a genuine and heartfelt thanks to Communications Lab, to Martin, who I know who is off camera, but who does a wonderful job together for you guys.
Yep.
Ryan, who have been fantastic partners to the association, to board member Brothers, who was able to join us today, and to the other elected officials on this call. Just a couple of housekeeping items I want to touch base on. This meeting has been recorded and will be available on our website. A staff member from ACC will also be sending out a brief survey about this presentation. If you could take a few minutes and fill that out, that would be great. If not, not a big deal. I also want to let you know about the next 2 Lunch and Learn series that we have coming up. Next Wednesday on the 29th, we'll be doing eviction and foreclosure moratoriums, kind of more of a land use planning issue, but something that your city should probably be up to date on. As well as on May 6th, we'll be doing best practices of virtual building inspections. Again, probably more of a planning department issue, but something that is not only effective now, but cities may consider using once the recovery is fully, whenever that may be. Again, thank you all so much for coming today. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to myself, to Courtney, or Arianna and Brian. I'm sure they'd love to hear from you. Arianna, go ahead.
I just want, somebody posted a question. I just wanted to answer it really quick because the question was, what strategies can we utilize once restrictions are lifted? So this is a really great question because restrictions, as I think everybody on this Lunch and Learn knows, are not going to be lifted all at once. It's going to be a rollout, and the rollout is probably, the best way to describe it is going to be a limping rollout. Certain things are going to be allowed, certain things are not going to be allowed, and communicating in that post environment is going to be hyper critical so that you can keep people safe and keep them informed about what is open and possible and what's not. So in terms of those large scale events, which we know are not going to be open for some time still, that's going to be very important to communicate. What does that mean for your parks? What does that mean for the beaches? So starting a communications program now where you're just giving a weekly update is going to continue to be super important after the fact of what's open and what's closed, what can and cannot be done. So I think when you're looking at strategies for the lifting, it's going to be making sure that you have lists available for people. You know, here's the green light, here's what you can go to right now. Here's the yellow light, use with caution, and here's the red light, this is still not allowed. So I think that there's some very easy visuals, very easy communication strategies that you can use to communicate that particular message.
And thank you for having us today. We
Thank you
appreciate
very
it.
Thank you all so much. Have a great day. Bye, everybody.
All right. Bye-bye.